close your eyes for a moment. Picture a time before safety regulations, before modern medicine, when sheer grit was your only shield. You are there, standing at the precipice of a gaping mine shaft, the chill air carrying the scent of damp earth and risk. You feel the tremor of a distant explosion, the searing heat from a colossal furnace, or the dizzying sway on the mast of a whaling ship in a furious storm. For generations, people dedicated their lives to tasks that demanded unthinkable courage. They braved crushing depths, suffocating heights, silent poisons, and raging infernos, all for survival. This is an invitation to step into their world, to understand the raw, visceral reality of work where every single day could be your last. Prepare to journey through the most dangerous jobs in history. You stand at the mouth of the shaft. The chill air that hinted at risk now engulfs you entirely, a profound cold that no sun ever reaches. The scent of damp earth is thicker here, laced with the metallic tang of ore and something else, something subtle but unnerving, the invisible presence of danger. This is where the earth breathes, sometimes a whisper, often a roar. And you, like thousands before you, are about to descend into its lungs. Before the invention of electric lights, before pneumatic drills, before even basic ventilation systems, the decision to go underground was a pact with the unknown. You gripped the rough timber of the cage, or perhaps in an older mine, simply a rope basket as it begins its shuddering descent. The sunlight vanishes, swallowed by the maw of the earth, leaving you in a realm of perpetual twilight, illuminated only by the flickering flame of a tallow candle or an oil lamp. Your breath hitches as the world above shrinks to a pinprick, then disappears entirely. The journey down is long, often hundreds of feet, sometimes more than 1,000. The air grows heavy, humid, pressing in on your chest. You can hear the dripping of water, the scuttling of unseen creatures, and the distant, muffled thud of work already underway. When your feet finally touch the uneven floor of the main gallery, the darkness is absolute, broken only by your own small light source, which casts grotesque, dancing shadows on the rough-hewn rock walls. Now you begin your walk, bent double in places where the seam is thin. The ceiling scrapes your cap, sometimes your back. The air is thick with dust, clinging to your throat, rasping in your lungs with every shallow breath. This dust, a mixture of rock particles and coal fines, is not merely an inconvenience. It is a slow, insidious killer, invisible at first, but over years, it will harden your lungs, turning them into solid, useless stone, a condition known as black lung or pneumoconiosis. For many, it was a guaranteed fate, a ticking clock built into the very act of their labor. The tools of your trade are simple, brutal. A pickaxe, its handle worn smooth by countless hands. A shovel, heavy and broad. These are your extensions, your only means of prying sustenance from the unwilling earth. Every swing of the pick sends a jarring shock up your arms, reverberating through your bones. The work is relentless, the hours long. 12-hour shifts were common, sometimes even longer, 6 days a week, often 7. There is no concept of overtime, no expectation of rest beyond what your utterly exhausted body demands. But the physical exertion, the aching muscles, the perpetual fatigue, these are only the surface layer of suffering. The true terror lies in the environment itself, an adversary both vast and indifferent. Rockfalls are a constant, terrifying possibility. The very ground you stand on, the ceiling above your head, could give way at any moment without warning. You learn to listen to the subtle groans and creaks of the mine, the whispers of shifting strata, hoping to discern the difference between routine geological movement and the prelude to catastrophe. One moment you are chipping away at a seam, the next, tons of rock could be raining down, crushing you beneath its unforgiving weight. There is no escape, no place to run in the narrow confines of a mine tunnel. Then there is the threat of explosion. Methane gas, known chillingly as fire damp, is a silent, odorless killer. It seeps from the coal seams, collecting in pockets, waiting for a spark. In the early days, miners used open flame lamps, their bare wicks a constant invitation to disaster. A single flicker, a moment of carelessness, and the entire tunnel could erupt in a searing inferno, followed by a violent concussion that ripped through the mine, incinerating everything in its path. Even if you survived the blast, the afterdamp, the poisonous mixture of gases left in its wake, would silently suffocate you, stealing the air from your lungs until you simply ceased to breathe. These explosions could decimate entire workforces in an instant, leaving behind shattered bodies and a profound echoing silence. Water, too, is a formidable enemy. Underground streams and hidden reservoirs could breach the mine walls, unleashing torrents of cold, dark water that flooded tunnels, trapping miners in rapidly shrinking air pockets, or simply drowning them in the darkness. Pump systems were rudimentary or non-existent, making the fight against flooding a desperate, often losing battle. Beyond the immediate explosive dangers, there were the slower, more insidious poisons. Carbon monoxide, white damp, another odorless, colorless gas, caused headaches, dizziness, and then unconsciousness, often without the victim even realizing they were being poisoned. Carbon dioxide, black damp, simply replaced the oxygen in the air, leading to a slow, suffocating death. Miners would sometimes carry a caged canary with them, its sensitive respiratory system acting as a grim early warning system. If the canary stopped singing or worse, fell off its perch, you knew you had precious little time to escape. Children, often as young as 5 or 6 years old, worked alongside adults. They were called trappers, sitting alone in the dark for 12 hours, opening and closing ventilation doors to direct air flow, a task vital for survival but mind-numbingly monotonous and terrifyingly isolated. Others were hurriers, pulling heavy coal carts through low tunnels, their small bodies forced into unnatural positions, their spines bent, their knees raw and bleeding. These children were exposed to the same dangers as the adults, their young bodies even more vulnerable to the crushing weight of the work in the toxic environment. Your community, the mining village, lives and dies with the mine. Every time the whistle blows for the end of a shift, families hold their breath, counting heads, waiting for their loved ones to emerge from the black maw. News of an accident rips through the village like wildfire, a collective gasp of horror, followed by the grim procession of rescue attempts, which were often more about recovering bodies than saving lives. Imagine the psychological toll. The claustrophobia of the confined spaces, the constant fear of collapse, the chilling dread of an explosion, the isolation of working alone in the dark, the shared grief for fallen comrades. Every day was a gamble, a test of endurance against overwhelming odds. Miners developed a grim camaraderie, a bond forged in shared peril and mutual reliance. Their lives depended on each other, on the strength of their timber supports, and on a prayer that the earth would not claim them today. These were the men, women, and children who fueled the Industrial Revolution, who powered the factories, heated the homes, and propelled the ships. They dug the very foundations of modern society, often paying the ultimate price in return for a meager wage. Their courage was not the courage of a soldier in battle, but a daily grinding resilience, a quiet heroism performed in the perpetual night of the earth. When you emerge from the mine at the end of your shift, blinking against the harsh daylight, your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Your face is streaked with coal dust, your clothes are grimy and damp, but you are alive. You have survived another day. You know that tomorrow you will descend again into the darkness, into the danger, because there is no other choice. This was the miner's plight, a life lived on the precipice, a constant dance with death in the unforgiving heart of the earth. You emerge from the mine, your lungs still burning with coal dust, the memory of crushing rock still fresh in your mind. But the darkness, the danger, it does not end at the pit mouth. For some, the perilous journey continues not into the earth, but onto the vast, unpredictable surface of the world's oceans. Imagine yourself now, standing not on solid ground, but on the heaving deck of a wooden ship, the rhythmic groan of its timbers a constant companion. The air here is sharp with salt and the cold breath of the sea, a stark contrast to the stagnant heat and dust of the mine. You are a whaler, a man who has chosen to pit his strength and cunning against the largest creatures on earth, to chase behemoths across boundless blue. This is not a life for the faint of heart, for the sea is a merciless mistress, and the leviathans you hunt possess a power that can splinter a ship and crush a man in an instant. Your journey began months ago, perhaps even years. You sailed from Nantucket or New Bedford or from the bustling docks of New London, leaving behind everything familiar for a voyage into the unknown, a world of endless water and brutal purpose. The ship, your cramped and often foul-smelling home for these interminable months, is a floating factory. Its holds are designed to store thousands of barrels of precious oil, its deck equipped with a try-works, a brick furnace where blubber will be rendered down. The pervasive scent of stale whale oil, mixed with salt, tar and human sweat, permeates everything you own, every breath you take. The danger here is manifold, beginning with the sheer scale of the ocean itself. You are a tiny speck on an immense canvas, thousands of miles from land, far beyond the reach of any swift help should disaster strike. Storms can rise with terrifying speed, whipping the waves into monstrous peaks that threaten to engulf your small vessel. A rogue wave can sweep a man overboard in a heartbeat, plunging him into the freezing depths where survival is measured in mere minutes against the grip of hypothermia. You learn to lash yourself to the mast during gales, feeling the ship shudder and groan beneath you, listening to the shrieking wind, praying for dawn, praying for calm, knowing that one wrong lurch could be your last. But the ocean's wrath is only one enemy. The true test of your courage comes when the cry goes out from the masthead, "There she blows!" A lookout has spotted a plume of vapor, a telltale sign of a whale breaching the surface. Adrenaline surges through your veins, a familiar rush that overrides the constant gnawing fear. This is what you came for, the moment of truth after months of patient, monotonous sailing. You scramble into one of the smaller, open boats, typically manned by 6 men to a crew, armed with razor-sharp harpoons and long, lethal lances. These boats are barely more than flimsy wooden shells compared to the gargantuan creature you pursue. The oarsmen pull with desperate, synchronized strength, silently, cautiously, until you are within striking distance. The whale, a colossal force of nature, could be a sperm whale, its massive block-like head housing the valuable spermaceti oil, or a right whale yielding copious amounts of baleen and blubber. Each one a living mountain of muscle and bone. You are the harpooner, perhaps standing precariously at the bow, poised, your heart hammering against your ribs like a drum. The whale's immense form looms beneath the water, a dark, shifting shadow, a living submarine. You wait for the precise moment, for the perfect angle, for the most vulnerable spot. Then, with a grunt of primal effort, you heave the heavy, barbed iron. It plunges deep into the whale's flesh, followed by a thick, strong rope. This is where the real peril begins, the infamous Nantucket slayreed. The harpooned whale, enraged and terrified, dives deep into the crushing blackness or surges forward with unimaginable power, dragging your small boat behind it at breathtaking speed. The line screams through the chocks, threatening to snap, threatening to burn through your calloused hands, threatening to entangle and pull you into the icy abyss. You cling on, spray lashing your face, the roar of the water in your ears, a terrifying, exhilarating chase that can last for hours, pulling you further and further from the relative safety of your mother ship. The whale, in its death throes, is incredibly dangerous. It can turn on the boat, smashing it with its powerful flukes, splintering wood and sending men tumbling into the sea. Imagine the sheer terror of being in the water, miles from anywhere, knowing that the wounded Leviathan, thrashing in its agony, could crush you with a flick of its tail, or drag you down to the seabed. Many men met their end this way, drowned or maimed by the very creature they sought to conquer, their screams swallowed by the waves. Even if you successfully subdue the whale, bringing it alongside the ship is another feat of immense labor and constant danger. The cutting-in process is a gruesome ballet performed on a perpetually moving stage. Imagine yourself standing on a precarious platform, called a cutting stage, suspended over the side of the ship, directly above the thrashing, bloody carcass. You wield enormous, razor-sharp blubber spades, slicing away great strips of oily flesh. The deck becomes slick with blood and whale oil, treacherous underfoot. One slip, one moment of inattention, and you could fall between the ship and the whale, to be crushed between their immense forms, or dragged under by the relentless roll of the ocean, a watery tomb awaiting. The smell is overwhelming, a pungent, sickening mix of blood, salt, and the raw, musky odor of the whale. The cries of seabirds, drawn by the carnage, mingle with the shouts of the crew and the constant creaking of the ship. It is a scene of primal savagery, performed for the sake of light and lubrication back on land. Then comes the trying out, the rendering of the blubber in the tryworks. Open flames burn on the deck of a wooden ship, just feet from barrels of highly flammable whale oil. The risk of fire is constant and catastrophic. A single spark, an overturned pot, could turn your floating home into an inferno in moments, leaving you adrift in a burning coffin, facing a choice between burning alive or plunging into the freezing, empty ocean. Explosions were not uncommon, as highly pressurized steam and oil could ignite with devastating force. Beyond the immediate dangers of the hunt and processing, the long voyages themselves were a slow grind of peril. Scurvy, a brutal disease caused by vitamin deficiency, would rot teeth, open old wounds, and eventually kill. Dysentery and other illnesses spread rapidly through the cramped, unsanitary quarters. Accidents, far from shore, could lead to amputations or lingering, agonizing deaths without proper medical care. The psychological toll of months, sometimes years, at sea without sight of land, without female companionship, bred despair, madness, and sometimes violence. Mutiny was a dark specter on many a long, isolated voyage. You endured this life for oil, for the illumination of homes and streets across the world, for the lubrication of the burgeoning machinery of industry. Your reward was a share, often small, of the profits, a lay that might barely cover your debts upon your return. Many never returned at all, lost to the depths, consumed by the Leviathan, or simply vanished without a trace into the vastness of the sea, their names forgotten by all but the ocean itself. The whaler's existence was a relentless struggle against the colossal forces of nature and the raw power of the animal kingdom. It demanded courage beyond measure, immense physical strength, and an almost reckless disregard for one's own safety. It was a job that promised great reward but delivered even greater peril. A stark reminder that some of the most essential tasks in human history were performed by those willing to gamble their very lives against the mighty ocean and its magnificent, dangerous inhabitants. You stepped from the perpetual night of the mine into the churning, unpredictable depths of the sea, trading one form of darkness and danger for another, both equally unforgiving. You left the crushing pressures of the deep, the salt spray stinging your face, for a place that seems at first glance utterly safe. No roaring waves here. No collapsing tunnels. Instead, you find yourself in a bright, clean workshop, the air still, hushed save for the delicate click of brushes on tiny surfaces. The year is 1917 or 1920, somewhere in the United States, perhaps New Jersey or Illinois. The world has just emerged from the Great War, and a new marvel has captured the public's imagination: radium. Imagine the excitement. Discovered by the Curies, this luminous element glowed with an otherworldly light, promised health benefits, and seemed to hold the very essence of modernity. Radium was put into tonics, cosmetics, even toothpaste. Its applications were diverse, its potential seemed boundless, but its most widespread use, the one that touched thousands of young women, was in luminescent paint. This paint allowed the numbers on watches and clocks to glow in the dark, a vital innovation for soldiers returning from the trenches, for pilots, and for a world that was increasingly moving at night. You are one of these women, a radium girl. You sit at a long table, perhaps beside your sister or a friend, your apron clean, your hair neatly pinned. Before you are trays of tiny watch dials, no larger than a button, and an even tinier brush, a camel hair filament no thicker than a single eyelash. Your task is precise. Paint the numerals onto these dials, each stroke perfect, each number shimmering faintly with an ethereal, greenish light. The work demands absolute focus, a steady hand and an eye for the smallest detail. It is considered good, respectable work for a young woman, offering better pay than many other factory jobs. The atmosphere is often cheerful, filled with chatter and the shared rhythm of careful, repetitive motion. The work is delicate, meticulous. And to achieve the finest point on your brush, the factory supervisors instruct you to do something that seems entirely harmless, even practical. You moisten the brush with your lips, drawing it to a fine tip with a swift, unconscious gesture, a movement you repeat hundreds, perhaps thousands of times a day. You hear the constant advice: lip it, point it, paint it. You're even told it's good for you, a health tonic, a pick-me-up. The paint tastes sweet, a strange metallic sweetness that lingers on your tongue. When you go home, your hair, your clothes, your very skin glows in the dark, a faint, beautiful halo that makes you feel special, almost magical. You show your friends, your family, laughing as they gasp at the eerie luminescence. Some of the girls even paint their teeth to surprise their boyfriends, a dazzling, if fleeting, smile in the shadows. This glow, this soft, persistent light, becomes a symbol of your work, your modern life, and an unwitting marker of the invisible poison slowly seeping into your very being. But then the quiet begins. Not the quiet of the factory, but the quiet invasion within your own body. A persistent toothache. A loosened tooth that falls out without explanation, leaving a gaping wound that refuses to heal. Your jaw begins to ache, a deep, throbbing pain that keeps you awake at night. You feel a constant weariness, a profound fatigue that no amount of rest can cure. Your doctors are baffled. They suggest poverty, poor diet, even syphilis, a shameful diagnosis that only adds to your distress. They extract more teeth, remove parts of your jaw, but the infection only spreads, consuming bone, leaving your face disfigured, your breath foul. You watch as your friends, your sisters, sicken and die, one by one, their bodies wasting away, their bones brittle and breaking under the slightest pressure. You see the same pattern, the same agonizing decline. This isn't coincidence. This is something else. The company, the United States Radium Corporation, denies everything. They issue statements claiming that radium is harmless, that the girls' illnesses are due to other causes entirely unrelated to their work. They hire their own medical experts who discredit the growing number of sick and dying women. They try to silence you, to pay you off with meager sums, to make you disappear. They actively suppress information, dismissing the women as hypochondriacs or worse. But some of you, despite your weakening bodies, refuse to be silenced. You are Grace Fryer and Catherine Schaub and Edna Hussman and many others. You are the Radium Girls and you will fight. You pursue a lawsuit, a monumental struggle against a powerful corporation, against scientific ignorance, and against a medical establishment that often dismissed women's complaints. You seek justice not just for yourselves but for all who might follow. The science is grim. Doctors like Harrison Martland begin to piece together the terrifying truth. Radium, when ingested, behaves chemically like calcium, depositing itself in the bones. But unlike calcium, radium is constantly radioactive, a ceaseless emitter of alpha particles, bombarding the surrounding tissue, destroying bone marrow, causing anemia, sarcomas, and eventually a slow, agonizing death. Your glowing teeth, your glowing skin, the beautiful halo you once admired, was a beacon of your own destruction, each particle a tiny, ceaseless killer. The sweet taste you once enjoyed was the taste of poison, slowly consuming you from the inside out. The very luminescence that made the watches valuable was the same insidious force that dissolved your bones and extinguished your lives. The legal battle is long, arduous, and emotionally draining. You face public skepticism and corporate obstruction. Newspapers mock you, calling you greedy or imagining you as pitiful figures. But eventually your courage, your unwavering determination, forces a reckoning. Your case becomes a landmark, a stark awakening to the unseen dangers of industrial work. Your sacrifice leads directly to stronger worker safety laws, to the establishment of occupational health standards, and to a greater understanding of radiation sickness. The story of the Radium Girls ensures that no worker in any industry should ever again be treated as expendable, their health sacrificed for profit or ignorance. You, the dial painters, became unwilling pioneers in the fight for workers' rights, your suffering etched into the very fabric of industrial safety, forever illuminating the hidden costs of progress. You look back at the radiant faces of those young women, their smiles bright, their brushes poised. They were not facing the brute force of a crashing wave or the claustrophobic dread of a collapsing mine shaft. Their enemy was invisible, alluring, promised magic, and delivered death. The radium's kiss, a delicate touch that proved to be one of history's most insidious and heartbreaking betrayals. You moved from the Earth's crushing weight, through the ocean's unforgiving depths, and now into the seemingly innocuous, yet ultimately lethal glow of a modern marvel, each journey revealing a different, terrifying face of danger. The invisible menace of radium, a silent killer, recedes now, replaced by a different kind of terror. You feel a shift in the air, a palpable weight settling around you, heavy with heat and the scent of industry. No longer are you in the sterile, brightly lit workshops of dial painters, nor the deep, echoing chambers beneath the earth. You step instead into the heart of an inferno, a landscape forged from fire and brute force, where danger is not hidden but blazes before your very eyes. You stand at the threshold of a world dominated by iron and steel, a realm where progress is hammered out in sweat and sparks. The air here is thick, hot, and metallic, humming with a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through the very ground beneath your feet. You are in a crucible of human endeavor, an early industrial factory, perhaps a steel mill or a foundry in the late 1800s or early 1900s. The sheer scale is overwhelming. Towering furnaces glow with an internal fire that seems to warp the air around them. Gigantic machines, fueled by coal and steam, hiss and clank with relentless rhythm. The heat is immediate, oppressive. It assaults your skin, prickles your scalp, and makes your lungs labor for cool air that simply does not exist. You feel the radiating warmth from the massive hearths, even from a distance. Up close, it is a searing, relentless assault, pushing the limits of human endurance. Sweat begins to bead instantly on your brow, tracing rivulets down your face and neck. The men who work here, stripped to the waist, their bodies glistening with perspiration, move with a practiced, almost balletic grace amidst the chaos. Their muscles ripple under skin darkened by soot and sun, testament to years spent battling the furnace. You watch as a team of workers, their faces grim and determined, maneuver a ladle, a giant bucket of molten metal. The liquid inside glows with an incandescent, blinding white light, like a captured piece of the sun itself. It bubbles and seethes, throwing off sparks that dance and crackle in the dim, smoky air. This is not water or oil. This is liquid rock, capable of instantly vaporizing flesh and bone. One wrong step, one slip of a chain, one moment of lost concentration, and the contents of that ladle could spill, engulfing everything in its path. The ground here is uneven, treacherous, often slick with spilled oil or slag, making every movement a calculated risk. The noise is deafening. The roar of the furnaces, the incessant clanging of hammers against hot metal, the screech of cranes hoisting heavy beams, the shouts of foremen trying to communicate above the din. You feel the vibrations in your chest, a constant percussive assault that makes conversation almost impossible. Men learn to communicate through gestures, through knowing glances, through a shared understanding born of constant peril. The cumulative effect on their hearing is profound, a slow, inevitable march towards silence outside the factory walls. Look around you. Everywhere there are dangers. Overhead, massive cranes hoist beams and raw materials, swinging them with unnerving precision. A dropped load could crush a man flat, reduce him to an indistinguishable pulp beneath tons of steel. On the factory floor, unguarded machinery with exposed gears and belts spins and churns. Limbs can be caught, crushed, or torn away in an instant. A momentary lapse of attention, a tired stumble, and a man could be pulled into the maw of a hungry machine. The very air you breathe is a threat. Particulates of metal dust, soot from burning coal, and noxious fumes from the smelting process hang heavy, visible in the shafts of light that pierce the gloom. These men breathe it in hour after hour, day after day. Their lungs, like the factory itself, become clogged, corroded. Silicosis, lead poisoning, chronic bronchitis, and other respiratory diseases are not diagnoses, they are the expected costs of doing business. Many men cough up black sputum, a visible reminder of the poisons they inhale, a grim ticker counting down to an early grave. Consider the riveters, especially those constructing the skeletal frames of towering skyscrapers or monumental bridges. You are hoisted hundreds of feet into the air, a tiny figure against the vast expanse of the sky. The wind whips around you, threatening to tear you from your precarious perch. A red-hot rivet, thrown by a heater, glows like a miniature star as it arcs through the air. You catch it in a small bucket, then jam it into a hole, where another man hammers it into place with a pneumatic gun that shakes your very bones. The sheer audacity of these men, working with molten metal at dizzying heights, is breathtaking. A misstep, a strong gust of wind, a moment of vertigo, and you plummet, a silent scream lost in the roar of the city below. The life of a foundry worker, a steel worker, an iron puddler, is one of constant exertion and immediate threat. Their bodies are their tools, and these tools are pushed to their absolute limits. The intense heat leads to severe dehydration, heat stroke, and chronic fatigue. Burns are not uncommon. They are an occupational hazard, badges of a brutal trade. Splashes of molten metal leave their mark, scars etched into skin, a permanent reminder of close calls and agonizing pain. And yet, these men come back day after day. Why? Because these are the jobs that build nations. These are the jobs that forge the railways, the bridges, the skyscrapers, the engines of industry. They create the very backbone of modern society. Without their toil, their suffering, the world as we know it would not exist. They are the unsung architects of progress, their labor fueling an insatiable demand for steel, for iron, for the materials that shaped an era. You watch as a giant ingot, fresh from the furnace, glowing orange-red, is moved by massive tongs. The heat it radiates is immense, even from a distance. The men guiding it wear heavy, protective clothing, but even that offers only limited respite. The air shimmers and dances around the metal, a visible manifestation of its raw power. It is a dance with destruction, a constant negotiation with elemental forces. The shifts are long, often 12 hours or more, 6 or even 7 days a week. There is little time for rest, for recovery. The toll is cumulative both physically and mentally. The constant vigilance, the relentless noise, the perpetual heat, the ever-present danger, it grinds a man down, reducing his lifespan, eroding his spirit. Accidents are frequent, often fatal. A falling beam, an exploding boiler, a runaway train of slag cars. The factory floor is a landscape of potential disaster. These aren't glamorous deaths, like those in the pages of heroic sagas. These are brutal, anonymous ends, often leaving behind families without a breadwinner, communities scarred by loss. Yet, in their time these men were vital, their skills indispensable. They were the muscle and sinew of the industrial age, their sacrifice largely unacknowledged, their bodies consumed by the very fires they tended. You step back, feeling the phantom heat still clinging to your skin, the echoes of the metallic clang still vibrating in your ears. The men toil on, their faces grim but resolute, forging not just steel, but the very foundations of the modern world. Their story is a stark reminder that progress, especially in its early, unchecked forms, often demands a terrifying price. Their inferno was real, their danger visceral, a stark contrast to the subtle treachery of radium, yet equally deadly. You carry the heat with you, the scent of smoke, the clang of the hammer as you once again move on, leaving the roaring furnace behind, but never forgetting the bodies that fed its flames. You feel the last vestiges of the furnace's heat drain from your clothes, replaced by a sudden, creeping chill. The air changes around you, no longer acrid with smoke and hot metal, but heavy, damp, with an earthy, mineral scent. You are no longer bathed in the orange glow of molten iron, but enveloped by an absolute, profound darkness that seems to absorb all light, all sound, all hope. The clang of hammer on steel fades completely, replaced by a different kind of rhythm. The dull thud of pickaxes against rock, the scrape of shovels, the low rumble of wagons on unseen tracks. You stand at the mouth of a different kind of maw, not the blazing furnace, but a yawning black hole that disappears into the earth itself. This is the entrance to an underworld, a labyrinthine realm where human bodies wrestled with the planet for its hidden treasures. You hesitate at the brink, feeling the cold breath of the depths rise to meet you. This is where men went to earn their bread and too often to meet their end. This is the perilous world of the miner. You begin your descent, perhaps down a rickety, creaking ladder, perhaps crammed into a crude cage, dropping rapidly into the subterranean gloom. The light of the surface shrinks to a distant pinprick, then vanishes entirely, leaving you in a world defined by the dim flicker of a miner's lamp, or in earlier, more desperate times, just the straining vision of your own eyes in the encompassing blackness. The air grows heavier with each foot you descend, dust-laden, thick with the smell of damp earth, sweat, and something else, a subtle, sweet yet menacing odor of gas. The tunnel narrows, pressing in on you from all sides. You stoop, then crawl, navigating passages barely wide enough for your shoulders, the rock ceiling grazing your head, sometimes forcing you to hunch for hundreds of yards. The cold, persistent dampness permeates everything, seeping into your clothes, chilling you to the bone. Water drips incessantly from the unseen ceiling, forming stagnant pools underfoot, reflecting the weak lamplight like countless watery eyes staring back at you. The darkness here is not merely an absence of light. It is a palpable presence, a suffocating blanket that presses down on your senses, threatening to swallow you whole, to erase you. It is a darkness that seems to absorb sound as well, leaving only the magnified drip of water, the creak of timber, and the strained breathing of those around you. The air is always cold, always damp, thick with the smell of stagnant water and decaying wood, overlaid with the metallic tang of rock and the pervasive, sweet warning of unseen gases. You are constantly aware of the immense weight of the earth above you, tons and tons of rock pressing down, held back only by the fragile, groaning supports. In this confined, sunless world, the invisible becomes the most deadly. You hear whispers of fire damp, a terrifying, odorless gas, methane, perpetually released from the coal seams as they are broken open. A single spark, a carelessly exposed flame from an open lamp, could ignite it. In an instant, the tunnel would become a roaring inferno, a sudden, concussive wave of heat and force that rips flesh from bone, collapses tunnels, and extinguishes every life in its path. Imagine the terror. One moment, the rhythmic sounds of work, the next, an instant of blinding light, an unbearable heat that cooks you alive, and then, a shattering silence, followed by the cries of the injured, the groans of the dying, and the slow, agonizing suffocation as, after damp, carbon monoxide, seeps into the shattered galleries, claiming those who miraculously survived the blast. Even without gas, the earth itself conspires against you. The very ground you stand on, the ceiling above you, the walls around you, are unstable, a constant, unpredictable threat. The roof could give way at any moment, without warning. A sudden crack, a shower of fine dust, and then tons of rock and earth would descend with crushing finality, burying men instantly, trapping them alive in a tomb of their own making. You see the timber props, crude tree trunks bracing the ceiling, groaning under the immense weight of the mountain above, a desperate, fragile barrier against its crushing power. Each creak, each shift in the rock, is a chilling reminder of your vulnerability, a constant whisper of impending doom. Imagine living your entire working life under such conditions. The fear becomes a constant companion, a dull ache in your stomach, a tightness in your chest. Every creak of the timber, every shift in the earth, every new smell of gas, sends a jolt of adrenaline through you. You learn to read the signs, to feel the subtle vibrations, to trust your instinct over your eyes in the perpetual gloom. Yet, even the most experienced miner could be caught unaware, his intuition betrayed by a sudden, catastrophic failure of the earth. The constant strain, the perpetual anxiety, wore down the spirit as surely as the physical labor wore down the body. But the dangers are not always sudden and dramatic. There is a slower, more insidious killer that permeates every breath. The air you breathe is thick with coal dust, fine black particles suspended in the perpetually damp atmosphere. With every labored breath, this dust invades your lungs, coating them, hardening them, slowly strangling the very organ that sustains you. This is the black lung pneumoconiosis, a disease that would slowly consume miners, leaving them gasping for breath, coughing up black phlegm, their bodies ravaged long after they had left the pit. It was a death sentence delivered not by an explosion or a cave-in, but by the very air they needed to survive, a slow, torturous descent into breathlessness. Rats, huge and emboldened by the perpetual darkness, scurry past your feet, a constant, unsettling presence. They are scavengers but also, sometimes, an early warning system fleeing collapsing sections before the humans can react. The work itself is back-breaking, performed in cramped, unnatural positions. You lie on your side, hacking at the coal face, your muscles screaming, your body aching from dawn until dusk, often for shifts lasting 12 or even 14 hours. In the early days before mechanical ventilation became commonplace, the air would become foul, stale, and oxygen-depleted. Miners would carry caged canaries, their tiny lives serving as a barometer for human survival. A silent bird meant immediate, desperate flight from the poisonous, life-sapping air. And it was not just men who faced these horrors. You see the small figures, children, some as young as 5 or 6, working alongside their fathers or older brothers. They are trappers, opening and closing ventilation doors, sitting in absolute solitude in the dark for 12 hours a day, their only companions the passing coal wagons and the ever-present rats. Or they are hurriers, pulling heavy tubs of coal through narrow, low passages, often on their hands and knees, their young bodies twisted and deformed by the relentless labor. Their childhood stolen, their future often cut short by accident or by disease, their small lives consumed by the darkness. The mine is a world apart, a subterranean society bound by shared danger, grim determination, and a chilling camaraderie born of constant peril. Every day these men and boys descended into the earth, knowing that each shift might be their last, that the darkness could claim them forever, leaving their families destitute on the surface. The coal they extracted, however, was indispensable. It fueled the industrial revolution we just witnessed, powered the factories with their roaring furnaces, heated homes across vast continents, and drove the steamships that connected the world, shrinking distances and expanding empires. It was the very lifeblood of an expanding modern world, but that blood was often literally bought with the lives of the miners, shed in the silent, crushing grip of the earth, often without a whisper of recognition or gratitude from the world above. Thousands upon thousands died this way, each a single candle extinguished in the vast darkness, but together an ocean of lost lives. You emerge from the pit, blinking at the harsh, glorious sunlight, your body aching, your lungs burning, your mind scarred by the oppressive darkness and the constant, imminent threat of death. You carry the cold dampness, the taste of dust, the memory of desperate labor, and the faint, sweet scent of gas. It is a world where light was a luxury and life itself, a daily gamble against the indifferent, crushing power of the earth. Their toil, their sacrifice dug the very foundations of modern society, built on the unseen graves of thousands, swallowed by the darkness, their stories whispered by the wind that sweeps over the pitheads. You emerge from the suffocating gloom of the mine, your lungs still burning with the ghost of coal dust, your skin still chilled by the damp earth. You carry the memory of that brutal struggle against the unyielding stone, a struggle often lost to the silent crush of collapse or the explosive kiss of gas. But as you blink in the sun, you realize that the earth is not the only place where death lurks, nor is it the only darkness humanity had to navigate. There was another, more insidious shadow that clung to the very air you breathed, seeped into the water you drank, and festered in the crowded streets of every city. This was the shadow of disease, a relentless, invisible foe that swept through populations with terrifying speed and devastating power. And in the face of this omnipresent threat, another group of individuals stepped forward, not with pickaxes or shovels, but with a different kind of courage, one perhaps even more profound. These were the healers, the doctors, the nurses, the midwives, the barber surgeons, the plague physicians who chose to stand between humanity and its most intimate biological enemy. They volunteered or were compelled by their calling to enter the very heart of pestilence, to confront suffering head-on, often at the cost of their own lives. You step away from the mines, but you cannot escape the pervasive odor of humanity. It is the scent of crowded alleys, of unwashed bodies, of refuse mingling in the streets. You hear the coughs, the ragged breathing, the cries of pain that echo from every dwelling. In this era, sickness was not an exception. It was a constant companion, a household guest that often stayed until death. You live in a world where children's graves outnumber adult ones, where a scratch can turn fatal, where a common cold can descend into a life-ending pneumonia. There are no antibiotics, no antiseptic practices, no understanding of microscopic invaders. Disease is often attributed to bad air or miasma, to an imbalance of humors, or even to divine displeasure. Yet even in this landscape of ignorance and fear, some people dedicated their lives to understanding and combating these unseen forces. You are drawn into a small, stifling room, where the air is thick with the scent of fevered breath and desperation. A woman lies tossing on a straw mattress, her skin burning, her eyes glazed. A healer bends over her, perhaps a barber surgeon, his hands already stained from another patient, his breath mingling with hers. He feels her pulse, examines her tongue, perhaps prepares to bleed her, believing that removing bad blood will restore balance. His instruments, likely unwashed and used on countless others, lie on a nearby table, silent vectors of contagion. He does not know this. He believes he is helping, and perhaps in some small way he is, by offering comfort, by trying to alleviate symptoms, by simply being there. But with every touch, every breath exchanged in that confined space, he places himself in mortal peril. Consider the great plagues that swept across continents, emptying cities and decimating populations. Imagine the Black Death, where millions perished, leaving streets silent and homes abandoned. Who dared to walk those streets, to enter those plague-ridden homes? It was the plague doctors, their figures now iconic, yet in their time harbingers of dread. You see them approach, cloaked in heavy, wax-coated garments, their faces hidden behind grotesque, bird-like masks. The long beak of the mask is stuffed with aromatic herbs, lavender, mint, camphor, believed to ward off the bad air, or miasma thought to carry the disease. Their eyes peer out through glass lenses, giving them an almost alien appearance. In one hand they often carry a wooden stick, used to poke and prod patients, to examine them without direct touch, or to keep desperate crowds at bay. You watch as a plague doctor enters a house. The air inside is heavy, sweet with decay, pungent with the smell of sickness and fear. He examines the victim, perhaps already covered in buboes, swollen black lymph nodes, the terrifying hallmark of the bubonic plague. He might lance them, believing that draining the pus will cure the patient, spreading infected fluids into the already contaminated environment. His touch, though gloved and minimized, is still a risk. The very air he breathes, despite his herbal mask, is laden with the expelled breath of the dying. These individuals, often seen as figures of grim authority, were not immune. Many perished in their service, becoming victims of the very pestilence they tried to combat. They did not have the luxury of retreat. They were sworn or paid handsomely to confront the plague directly, to count the dead, to offer what futile comfort they could, and to sometimes try the most desperate, unproven remedies. Their exposure was total. Every visit to a patient with smallpox meant inhaling its airborne particles. Every dressing change for a wound meant direct contact with infection. Every birth they attended, especially in an era of high infant and maternal mortality, put them in intimate contact with bodily fluids and potential sepsis. You are a midwife, for example, assisting a laboring mother in a dimly lit cottage. Complications arise. The baby is breech. Your hands, perhaps not perfectly clean despite your best efforts, are inside the mother's body. Without knowledge of sterile technique, without antibiotics, a simple infection can sweep through the mother's body, claiming both lives and often yours too, through subsequent transmission. The field of surgery was, if anything, even more barbaric and dangerous for both patient and practitioner. Imagine yourself as a barber surgeon, tasked with an amputation. The patient is often conscious, screaming through the procedure, held down by assistants. You have no anesthesia beyond perhaps a swig of brandy. Your saw, your knives, are stained with the blood of previous operations, perhaps even those from battlefields. You make your cut through flesh and bone, exposing nerve and muscle to the open air, to the dust and grime of the operating room, which is often just a crowded room in a home or an open market stall. The patient's agony is intense. For you, the danger is not just the splashing blood or the patient's desperate struggles, but the constant risk of infection from the raw tissues and fluids. You breathe in the aerosols of disease, the cries of pain, the smell of fear and iron. And when the patient inevitably succumbs to shock or, more likely, a raging infection a few days later, you know deep down that you have contributed to their demise, despite your best intentions. It wasn't just physical disease that healers contended with. The suffering of the mind also fell under their purview, often in places of profound despair. You might find yourself in an asylum, a madhouse, where the mentally ill were often chained, starved, or subjected to brutal treatments, based on the belief that madness was a moral failing or an evil possession. The attendants and doctors in these places were exposed to violence, to extreme hygiene challenges, and to the psychological weight of witnessing relentless human suffering. They faced not just the physical diseases of their patients, but the very real threat of assault, of bites, scratches, and desperate struggles from individuals who were often more terrified than violent. Beyond the specific diseases and the lack of scientific understanding, there was the sheer exhaustion, the mental and emotional toll. You, as a healer in this time, witness death daily, hourly during epidemics. You see the faces of children taken too soon, of parents consumed by grief. You are expected to comfort, to guide, to offer hope where often there is none. You carry the weight of impossible decisions, of futile treatments. Your hands, your clothes, your very being, are constantly in contact with suffering and death. There is no therapy for you, no break from the constant assault on your senses and your spirit. You are a vessel for the sorrow of others, and that burden, in itself, is a profound and dangerous one. Many healers died young, succumbing to the very diseases they fought. Their sacrifices were often unrecorded, their names lost to history, but their courage echoes through time. They were the ones who dared to touch the untouchable, to confront the invisible, to stand guard at the gates of mortality, often with little more than courage, a rudimentary understanding, and a profound sense of duty. They laid the groundwork, through their trials and errors, through their suffering and their deaths, for the revolutionary medical advancements that would one day conquer many of these scourges. They were the frontline soldiers in humanity's oldest war, a war against its own biology, a war fought without glory, but with immense, quiet heroism. They were not just brave, they were essential. Their presence, however flawed their methods, offered a glimmer of hope in a world shrouded by disease. They eased pain, offered companionship in the darkest hours, and sometimes, through sheer serendipity or innate skill, they saved lives. You look back at them, these men and women in their crude garments and with their dangerous tools, and you feel a profound sense of respect. They were willing to sacrifice their own breath for the chance to extend another's, stepping into the invisible battlefield where even today, medical professionals face unseen threats, though now armed with far greater knowledge and tools. Their stories are a testament to human resilience, to the enduring desire to heal, even in the face of overwhelming odds and the constant, chilling whisper of the very diseases they sought to defeat. From the invisible battlefield of disease, you now step into a landscape equally unforgiving, one where the enemy is not microscopic, but monumental, the ancient forest itself. You trade the quiet hum of a sick room for the thunderous crash of falling giants. You leave behind the delicate tools of healing for the brute force implements of destruction and creation. This is a story of immense strength, profound risk, and a vital resource that built nations. This is the world of timber. Imagine yourself in the vast, untamed wilderness of the 1800s or early 1900s. The air is sharp and cold, carrying the damp scent of pine needles, wet earth, and the distant acrid tang of wood smoke. Sunlight, weak and pale, struggles to penetrate the dense canopy of towering trees, their trunks like ancient pillars reaching for the sky. You hear the rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound of steel striking wood, a dull thud followed by a sharp crack, echoing through the stillness. This is the sound of an axe biting deep, over and over, into the heartwood of a 100-year-old pine. You walk towards the sound, your boots sinking slightly into the soft, mossy forest floor. Around you, the forest teems with a quiet, watchful life. But your attention is drawn to the men who challenge this quiet. These are the loggers, the timber beasts, the muscle and sinew of a burgeoning industrial world. They are the unsung heroes whose labor fueled the expansion of cities, built railroads, and warmed countless homes. But their work came at a staggering, often deadly cost. Look at them. Their faces are weathered and grim, etched with sun and wind. Their hands, gnarled and calloused, grip the handles of their tools with a practiced, almost intimate familiarity. They wear thick woolen shirts, heavy canvas trousers, and sturdy boots, all stained with mud, sap, and sweat. Their breath plumes in the cold air as they swing their axes, each stroke perfectly aimed, each muscle straining. You stand back as a team of two, a sawyer and a feller, work in tandem. One wields a long two-man crosscut saw, its teeth gleaming as it bites through the bark and into the white wood. The other, the feller, uses his axe to cut a deep notch on the side of the tree where they want it to fall. This is a delicate dance of power and precision. Misjudge the notch, miscalculate the lean of the tree, or fail to account for the wind, and disaster waits. The tree begins to groan, a sound like a wounded beast, deep and resonant. A shiver runs through the ground beneath your feet. The sawyers pull their saw free, scrambling back, their eyes fixed on the magnificent column of wood. You watch, holding your breath, as the colossal trunk sways, seemingly in slow motion, then accelerates. With a sound that rips through the air, a deafening crack that echoes for miles, it tears free from its stump. Timber. The cry rings out, a warning and a triumph. The ground trembles violently as the tree plummets earthward, branches snapping like toothpicks, the impact shaking the very air around you. A cloud of sawdust, bark, and snow explodes upwards, momentarily obscuring the scene. This is the first act of treachery, the falling tree itself. It is unpredictable. A rotten core, an unseen branch, a sudden gust of wind can send it spinning, twisting, or kicking back, crushing anything or anyone in its path. These are the widowmakers, trees that kill with a silent, swift brutality. But the danger doesn't end with the fall. Now begins the arduous task of limbering and bucking. You watch as men move in with axes and smaller saws, stripping away the branches, turning the fallen giant into a manageable log. Each swing of an axe is a potential injury. A slip, a glancing blow, and a deep gash could be the least of a man's worries in a remote wilderness, miles from any medical help. Infection, gangrene, and blood loss were constant companions. Once limbed, the logs must be cut into shorter, transportable lengths. This is bucking. Again, the long saws come out, the men kneeling or bending over the immense trunks. The tension in the wood itself can be a hidden enemy. As a log is cut, it can pinch the saw blade or worse, spring apart with immense force, sending shards of wood flying or trapping a man's limbs. Now consider the transportation. How do you move these colossal logs from the depths of the forest to the sawmill, perhaps hundreds of miles away? In the warmer months, animals were used. Teams of oxen or horses, their powerful muscles straining, would drag the logs along skid roads, paths slicked with water or ice to reduce friction. You see the handlers, known as teamsters, risking life and limb to guide these powerful animals through uneven terrain, dodging rolling logs and unpredictable animal reactions. A misplaced foot, a moment of distraction, and a teamster could be crushed beneath a rolling log or the heavy hooves of his own team. But the most spectacular and arguably the most perilous method of transportation was the log drive. Imagine a river swollen with spring meltwater churning and roaring. And now imagine that river choked with thousands upon thousands of logs, packed together, jostling, tumbling, and grinding against one another, forming a solid, moving mass of timber. You stand on the riverbank, the spray from the rapids chilling your face, the roar of the water and the groaning of the wood a symphony of raw power. These are the river drivers, the daredevils of the logging industry. They walk atop the rolling, shifting mass of logs, their feet nimble, their balance extraordinary. With long poles called peavies or cant hooks, they guide the timber, breaking up potential jams, urging the logs onward. One misstep, one loss of balance, and a man would plunge into the icy, turbulent water, immediately engulfed by the crushing, tumbling logs. Many were swept under, never to resurface, their bodies ground to pulp by the relentless current and the weight of the timber. Log jams were the ultimate test of courage and skill. When thousands of logs snagged on a rock, a bend in the river, or a fallen tree, they would pile up, creating an immense, unstable dam of wood. The pressure behind such a jam was unimaginable. You hear the creaking and groaning as the logs strain against each other, building to a terrifying crescendo. To break a jam, men would have to venture onto this unstable mountain of wood, locate the key log, and with axes and dynamite attempt to dislodge it. The moment the key log was freed, the jam would explode, releasing a torrent of wood and water with terrifying force. The men had mere seconds to scramble to safety, often leaping from log to log, or sometimes, knowing they couldn't escape, accepting their fate as they were swept away. The river took countless lives, a silent, hungry beast consuming those who dared to harness its power. Even in winter the dangers were profound. You see men working in bitter cold, their faces chapped and reddened, their breath freezing in the air. Trees fall faster in frozen conditions, making them even more unpredictable. Logs are dragged across frozen lakes and rivers, the ice a deceptive surface that could crack and give way without warning, plunging men, horses, and entire loads of timber into the frigid depths. Hypothermia, frostbite, and drowning were ever-present threats. The living conditions were harsh, adding another layer of treachery. Remote camps, often temporary, provided rudimentary shelter. Crowded bunkhouses, poor sanitation, and meager diets were common. Accidents, both minor and catastrophic, were commonplace, but medical care was often non-existent. A broken bone, a deep cut, or a lingering cough could quickly become a death sentence in such isolated conditions. This was a world of raw physicality, of constant vigilance, where a moment's lapse could mean sudden death. It was a job that demanded incredible strength, resilience, and a profound understanding of the forest and its unpredictable nature. The timber industry, essential as it was, built its foundations on the backs of men who risked everything every single day, against the crushing weight and unpredictable fury of the very trees they sought to master. You look around the modern world today at the wooden structures that surround you, at the paper you write on, at the furniture in your home. Each piece carries with it a faint echo of the thunderous crash, the biting axe, the roaring river, and the immense, silent sacrifice of those who faced timber's treachery head-on. They were the giants who brought down giants, and in doing so, laid the very groundwork of our civilization. Their stories are etched not just in the annals of dangerous professions, but in the very fabric of the world we inhabit. The roaring rivers and crushing forests of the timber trade demanded a battle fought in the expansive wilds, under an open sky. But as you shift your gaze from the vast outdoors to the burgeoning cities of the 18th and 19th centuries, another kind of danger emerged, one far more insidious, confining, and tragically intimate. Here, within the very walls of your home, lurked a peril that snaked its way through every house and factory, a silent threat that gathered in the darkness, demanding a terrible price from those brave enough to face it. You walk down a cobbled street in London or Manchester, the air thick with the smell of coal smoke and human endeavor. Towering brick chimneys pierce the smoggy sky, each one a dark sentinel over the city's hearths and industries. Every fireplace in every home, every furnace in every workshop, relied on these chimneys to draw away the acrid fumes and choking smoke. But with every fire lit, a layer of black oily soot began to accumulate, clinging to the brickwork, narrowing the passageway. This was not just unsightly, it was a deadly fire hazard, an impediment to efficient heating, and a slow poison released into the air if left unchecked. The solution for centuries was shockingly simple and profoundly brutal. Send someone small enough to climb inside and scrape it clean. You might imagine a grizzled adult, perhaps a man hardened by years of labor. But the grim reality was far crueler. The perfect worker for this task was a child, often a boy as young as 6 or 7, sometimes even 4. These were the climbing boys or chimney sweeps apprentices, though the term apprentice often sugar-coated a brutal form of indentured servitude or outright slavery. You hear a faint reedy cry pierce the din of the city, "Sweep! Chimney sweep!" It is a familiar sound, a call that signals the arrival of these small, sooty figures, often led by a master sweep, himself a product of the same harsh system. Imagine yourself, a child of this era, snatched from a workhouse, sold by desperate parents, or simply orphaned and left to the mercies of the streets. Your small stature, your nimble hands, your very innocence, made you valuable, a commodity in a dangerous trade. The moment of truth arrives. You stand before a gaping maw of a fireplace, its opening barely wide enough to admit your small body. The air within is stale, thick with the scent of old ash, creosote, and the ghosts of countless fires. Your master gives a curt command, perhaps a shove. You are stripped to your trousers, sometimes completely naked, to better feel your way and prevent clothes from snagging. A small brush, often just a hand brush, is your only companion. You push yourself into the narrow opening, your back scraping against the cold, rough brick. The light fades quickly, replaced by an absolute, suffocating darkness. Above you, the chimney rises like a vertical tunnel, a daunting, perilous climb. You begin your ascent, finding toeholds and handholds in the crevices and projections of the brickwork, your bare skin a poor protection against the abrasive surfaces. Each movement dislodges a cascade of soot, fine black powder that coats your face, fills your eyes, and clogs your nostrils. You cough, a dry, rasping sound that echoes eerily in the confined space. The journey upwards is a labyrinth of twists and turns, tight bends, and sometimes even horizontal flues. You must navigate these blindly, relying on touch and instinct. A misstep could mean a terrible fall. But falling is not the only fear. The real terror is getting stuck. The chimneys, especially those in older, grander houses, were often designed with intricate passages, narrow angles, and even decorative internal structures that could trap a small body. You hear stories, whispered in the back alleys, of boys who became wedged, unable to move up or down. Their frantic cries would slowly fade, their breathing becoming shallower and shallower as the soot, disturbed by their struggles, rained down upon them, slowly suffocating them. Sometimes, to retrieve a body, a wall had to be demolished. Sometimes they were simply left, their small frames entombed within the very structure they were meant to cleanse. Even when the passage is clear, the climb is a torment. The soot enters every pore, every cut, every scratch. It gets into your eyes, causing painful inflammation and infections. It fills your lungs, leading to a chronic, wheezing cough that never truly leaves you. Over time, the unnatural contortions of climbing twist your young spine and deform your joints. Your knees become calloused, your elbows scarred, your hands permanently stained. And then there is the heat. Often, chimneys would be swept while still warm, sometimes even hot, due to a pressing need or an impatient householder. You feel the searing heat radiating through the bricks, burning your skin as you ascend, a constant reminder of the inferno that once raged there and might again. Sometimes, a stubborn soot deposit would be set alight to burn it away, with a boy still inside, ordered to fan the flames or push the burning mass further up. The psychological toll is immense. You are alone in the darkness, often for hours, covered in grime, breathing poisoned air, knowing that at any moment, a brick could crumble, a bird's nest could block your path, or the soot itself could overcome you. At the top, you emerge, a small, black apparition against the sky, blinking against the sudden light, your lungs burning, your body aching. Then, the long descent, the same dangers in reverse. Back on the ground, your work is not over. You help your master bag the collected soot, a valuable commodity used as fertilizer. Your meals are often scraps, your bed a pile of rags, your only comfort the brief camaraderie of other climbing boys, all bearing the same invisible scars. You learn to fear not just the chimney but your master's temper, for a slow sweep or a missed patch could earn you a beating. But the most insidious danger was one that would not manifest for years, sometimes decades. The constant exposure to coal soot, a known carcinogen, led to a horrifying and unique affliction: chimney sweeps cancer, specifically scrotal cancer. It was the first occupationally linked cancer ever identified, a grim testament to the silent, invisible killers lurking in this profession. Many boys, if they survived the childhood dangers, would face a slow, agonizing death from this disease in adulthood. The plight of the climbing boys eventually stirred the conscience of society. Reformers, like Jonas Hanway in the mid-18th century, and later Lord Shaftesbury, championed their cause. You hear the passionate speeches, read the pamphlets, see the growing public outcry. But the resistance was fierce. Masters argued that only small boys could do the job effectively, that mechanical brushes were inefficient, and that their livelihoods would be destroyed. The laws banning child sweeps were difficult to enforce, often ignored and openly flouted. It took decades of tireless campaigning, of public awareness, of horrifying accounts brought to light, before meaningful change truly took hold. By the late 19th century, mechanical brushes and more robust regulations slowly began to replace the use of climbing boys in many parts of the Western world. The cry of "sweep" began to fade from the city streets, replaced by the clatter of longer poles and specialized equipment. You look at the clean, well-maintained chimneys of today, perhaps in your own home if you have a fireplace. You might never consider the human cost that once went into keeping those flues clear. The silent, sooty work of thousands of small, forgotten children is etched into the very foundations of our urban heritage. Their stories, often unwritten and unheard, are a stark reminder of a time when the lives of the most vulnerable were traded for the simple comfort of a warm hearth, a dark chapter in the history of human labor, a profound call from the depths of the chimney that echoes through time. These were not just dangerous jobs. They were childhoods stolen, bodies broken, and futures extinguished, all for a breath of clean air in a smoky world. The shadows of the past stretch long, reaching from the narrow, soot-choked flues of urban homes to touch the very tops of our tallest buildings. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, a new kind of city began to emerge. Towers of steel and glass, monuments to human ingenuity and ambition, clawed their way towards the clouds. But these giants did not simply appear. They were born from the sweat and courage of another breed of worker, men who lived and labored in the sky, performing some of the most perilous jobs imaginable. You stand on the bustling street below, craning your neck upwards. The roar of the city traffic feels distant, muffled by the sheer scale of what is happening above you. You see the skeletal frames of new skyscrapers piercing the haze, growing day by day, girder by colossal girder. And up there, silhouetted against the vast expanse of the sky, you see them, tiny figures, moving with an astonishing ease across narrow beams, hundreds of feet above the earth. These are the ironworkers, the true giants in the sky. Imagine for a moment not the street below, but the dizzying world above. You are one of them. You pull yourself up, hand over hand, clambering onto the raw steel skeleton of a building that is still more dream than reality. The air up here is different. It is thinner, sharper, carrying the tang of metal and the bite of the wind. You look down and the world shrinks into a patchwork quilt of rooftops and ant-like people. The street feels impossibly far away, a different dimension entirely. There are no safety nets, no harnesses to catch you if you stumble. Your only safety is your skill, your balance, and the steely grip of your hands. Your boots, heavy and worn, find purchase on a narrow I-beam, perhaps only a foot wide. You walk it with the confident stride of a tightrope walker, hands free, carrying heavy tools or bolts. The beam might be swaying slightly in the breeze, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor that others might not notice, but you feel it. It becomes an extension of your body, a living thing beneath your feet. A gust of wind whips around you, tugging at your clothes, threatening to unbalance you. You lean into it, a dancer against an invisible force, your muscles tensed, your focus absolute. One misstep, one moment of distraction and gravity, the unseen enemy, will claim you. The sounds up here are unique. The rhythmic clang of hammers hitting steel rings out, a metallic symphony of construction. The piercing shriek of a rivet gun cuts through the air, followed by the percussive thud as a hot rivet is hammered into place, sealing two pieces of steel together forever. You hear the shouts of your fellow workers, terse commands and warnings carried on the wind. "Heads up!" is a common cry, and you instinctively glance down, scanning for any falling debris, any dropped wrench or bolt that could be a deadly missile for those below, or a fatal blow if it strikes you. You are a connector, one of the elite few who brave the highest reaches. A derrick man below you guides a massive steel beam, hoisted by a crane. It swings towards you, a lethal pendulum of metal weighing tons. You reach out, gloved hands guiding it into place, aligning bolt holes with uncanny precision. The wind pushes against the beam, making it sway wildly. You hold it, wrestle it into submission, shouting directions, your voice hoarse above the wind. Once it is roughly in position, you use a spud wrench, a heavy tool with a tapered handle, to align the holes perfectly, forcing it through one, then driving a temporary bolt through the other. Your partner quickly follows with another bolt, securing the beam, even if only temporarily. The tension is immense, the stakes impossibly high. Your days are a relentless ballet of strength and nerve. You climb ladders that seem to go on forever, scale vertical steel columns using nothing but rebar and your own brute strength. You work in all weather conditions. Scorching summer sun that heats the steel until it burns to the touch, and brutal winter winds that chill you to the bone, turning the metal into an icy death trap. Rain makes the beams slick and treacherous. Snow and ice obscure your footing, turning every step into a calculated risk. Yet the work goes on. The city demands its towers, and you are the one building them. Many of these men, particularly in the early 20th century, came from the Mohawk Nation. Known as skywalkers, their reputation for fearlessness and an incredible sense of balance became legendary. They spoke of a lack of fear of heights, a natural gift, a kinship with the sky. They were essential to the construction of almost every major skyscraper in North America, from the Empire State Building to the Golden Gate Bridge. Their traditions and their lives became intertwined with the very fabric of these towering achievements. But even with their legendary skill, the dangers were ever present. The dangers were not just from falls. Burns from red-hot rivets were common, scorching flesh and leaving permanent scars. Dropped tools, swinging beams, pinched limbs, and the constant strain on the body took their toll. The statistics of injury and death were staggering. In the boom years of skyscraper construction, it was not uncommon for one man to die for every 10 floors built on a major project. For every skyscraper that rose, a silent memorial of lost lives was etched into its very foundations. The danger was simply a part of the job, an accepted, almost fatalistic element of earning a living. You take your lunch break, perched precariously on a beam hundreds of feet above the ground. You share a sandwich and a flask of coffee with your crew. The conversation is often light, masking the ever-present tension, the shared understanding of the risks you all face. You watch the city below, its vastness sprawling out to the horizon. You are building its future, shaping its silhouette against the sky. The view is unparalleled, a panorama that few others will ever witness, and you earned it, every breathtaking, terrifying inch of it. As the day draws to a close, you begin your descent, leaving the metallic skeleton to cool in the evening air. The city lights begin to twinkle far below, a shimmering carpet of human activity. You are tired, your muscles ache, your hands are raw, but there is a profound sense of accomplishment. You are a builder, a giant in the sky, contributing to something monumental, something that will stand for generations. Yet, you also carry the weight of what could happen tomorrow or the day after. You know friends, colleagues who have fallen. You have witnessed the sudden, sickening plunge, the desperate cry, the chilling silence that follows. You carry their memories, their stories, etched into your own experience. The courage it takes to return day after day, to step onto that narrow beam, to face the abyss, is immense. It is a courage born of necessity, of skill, and of a shared fraternity among men who defied gravity and challenged the limits of human endurance. The next time you look up at a towering city skyline, take a moment. Imagine the hands that built it, the feet that walked its highest beams, the hearts that beat with a mixture of fear and pride in the face of the ultimate danger. These anonymous heroes, these giants in the sky, forged our modern world, one perilous rivet at a time, leaving behind a legacy that literally touches the clouds, a testament to the human spirit's relentless drive to build, to climb, and to reach for the impossible no matter the cost. Their silent stories whisper on the wind, a powerful echo from the dizzying heights of history's most dangerous jobs. You have journeyed with us to the dizzying heights, witnessed the raw courage of those who built our world one perilous rivet at a time. You have felt the wind whip around you, seen the abyss yawn beneath your feet, and understood the tangible, immediate dangers of their extraordinary work. But what of the dangers you cannot see, the threats that lurk not in the vast open air, but in the very substances you touch, breathe, or even ingest? What of the invisible enemies that seep into your skin, corrupt your blood, and slowly, insidiously dismantle your very being? Today we descend from the breathtaking heights to explore a darker, more insidious side of human labor. We turn our attention to the jobs where the threat was not a sudden fall or a crushing weight, but a silent, creeping poison. These are the tales of poisoned hands, of bodies betrayed by the very materials they worked with, of lives slowly extinguished by the invisible killers of the industrial age. We will immerse ourselves in a world where the pursuit of progress, beauty, or necessity led to unimaginable suffering, a suffering often hidden from plain sight until it was tragically too late. Imagine yourself in a world where beauty came at a deadly price. You are in a factory, perhaps in the early 1900s. The air around you buzzes with the quiet, focused energy of dozens of young women. Their work seems almost delicate, artistic even. They paint watch dials, meticulously applying luminous paint to tiny numbers and hands. The substance they work with glows with an ethereal, almost magical light. It is radium, the wonder element, recently discovered and celebrated for its supposed health benefits. You watch as a young woman dips a fine camel hair brush into a small crucible of the glowing paint. To achieve the finest point, to get the numbers just right, she brings the brush to her lips, shaping it with a quick, practiced lick. This is a common technique, encouraged by foremen, even praised for its efficiency. Each lick, each precise stroke, deposits a microscopic amount of radium into her body. She does this hundreds, perhaps thousands of times a day. Her hands, her lips, her clothes, even her hair, glow faintly in the dim light of the factory. She is, in a macabre way, a living constellation. At first, there are no outward signs of trouble. The women feel fine, perhaps even a little special for working with such a groundbreaking material. But then the subtle changes begin. A toothache that will not go away. Swollen gums. Anemia. The pain intensifies, spreading from the jaw. You watch as a friend, once vibrant, begins to look pale, gaunt. Her bones ache. Her jaw starts to swell, becoming grotesquely disfigured. What was once a minor toothache soon becomes a rotting, cancerous lesion that consumes her jawbone from the inside out. The radium, once thought harmless, even beneficial, is now aggressively attacking her bones, where it has lodged itself, mimicking calcium. These women, known chillingly as the Radium Girls, faced an agonizing, slow death. Their bones disintegrated, their bodies riddled with tumors. They were vibrant young women whose very essence was slowly poisoned by a substance they were told was safe, even healthy. Their glowing smiles, a testament to their work, became a haunting symbol of a deadly deception, a beacon of invisible destruction. Their fight for justice against powerful corporations was a landmark moment, setting precedents for occupational disease labor law, but it came too late for many of them. Their legacy, though, burns as brightly as the dials they painted, a warning from the past about the hidden dangers of the world around us. Let us now step into a different kind of workshop, one filled with strange odors and a frantic energy. You find yourself in a hat factory of the 18th or 19th century. The air is thick with the smell of felt, animal skins, and something metallic, acrid. Men, and often women and children too, work tirelessly transforming animal fur, usually beaver or rabbit, into fine felt for gentlemen's hats. The key to this transformation, the secret ingredient that binds the fur fibers together, is mercury nitrate. You observe a hatter, his hands stained and rough, as he dips bundles of fur into a solution containing mercury. He then vigorously rubs and presses the fur, shaping it into the conical form of a hat. The mercury, a heavy, silvery liquid metal, is absorbed through his skin, inhaled as vapor, and even ingested when he inevitably wipes his brow or eats a meal in the factory. The workshops are poorly ventilated, the mercury fumes clinging to every surface, saturating the very air the workers breathe. At first, the symptoms are subtle. A tremor in the hands, barely noticeable. But over time, the tremor worsens, becoming uncontrollable shaking, a condition known as hatter's shakes. You watch as a seasoned hatter struggles to hold a cup of water steady, his body racked by involuntary movements. His gait becomes unsteady, his speech slurred. His teeth loosen, his gums rot, and his hair often falls out. Perhaps most disturbing is the gradual deterioration of his mind. He becomes irritable, paranoid, prone to violent mood swings, and suffers from hallucinations. The phrase, "mad as a hatter," was not merely a whimsical saying. It was a grim, accurate description of the mercury poisoning that ravaged these workers. His memory fades, his reasoning becomes impaired. He is trapped in a mental fog, his personality altered beyond recognition. His poisoned hands, once skilled and precise, now tremble uncontrollably, a visible testament to the invisible killer that has invaded his body and mind. The elegant hats he helped create would adorn the heads of gentlemen, completely unaware of the agonizing price paid by the artisans whose lives were slowly consumed by mercury. Our journey through historical dangers now takes us deep beneath the earth. You stand at the entrance of a coal mine, a gaping maw in the earth, swallowing sunlight and exhaling the damp, earthy scent of rock and damp air. This is a world of darkness, dust, and immense pressure. While the immediate dangers of collapses and explosions are ever present, an even more insidious threat lurks in the very air you breathe down here. Miners face an array of invisible killers. You see them chipping away at coal seams, their faces streaked with black dust, their lungs slowly filling with microscopic particles of coal and silica. Every breath they take in that confined space brings them closer to the dreaded black lung, or silicosis, diseases that slowly turn their lungs to stone, making every breath a struggle, a gasp for air that ultimately never comes. But beyond the dust there were the gases. Consider the early mines, where ventilation was rudimentary, often non-existent. You imagine the air becoming heavy, thick as you descend further. The flickering flame of a candle, your only source of light, suddenly sputters, then dies. This is the deadly kiss of choke damp, carbon dioxide, building up in the stagnant air, silently suffocating you without warning. Or perhaps the flame dances wildly, elongating, a harbinger of fire damp, methane gas, highly flammable and capable of catastrophic explosions with the slightest spark. And then there is the truly treacherous white damp, carbon monoxide. Odorless, colorless, tasteless, it is the perfect invisible assassin. You might feel a dull headache, a wave of nausea, a sudden dizziness. But by then it is often too late. Carbon monoxide binds to your red blood cells far more readily than oxygen, starving your body and brain of the vital gas. You become disoriented, weak, collapsing before you even realize the full extent of the danger. Your body, deprived of oxygen, simply gives up. The coal that fueled the Industrial Revolution, that brought warmth and power to millions, extracted a terrible toll in the dark, suffocating depths, not just through explosions and collapses, but through the silent, invisible poisons of the air itself. Let us venture into the vibrant, yet perilous world of 19th-century fashion and decor. You are in a dressmaker's shop, perhaps, or a wallpaper factory. Everywhere around you, there is a riot of color, particularly brilliant greens. This is the era of Chile's green and Paris green, pigments that revolutionized the visual world, making possible dazzling emerald hues in fabrics, artificial flowers, and wallpapers. But these beautiful colors held a dark secret. They were made with arsenic. You watch as women painstakingly cut and shape artificial flowers, their fingers constantly touching the vibrant green dyes. The fine dust from these pigments, laden with arsenic, settles on their skin, is inhaled with every breath, and becomes lodged beneath their fingernails. Or imagine children in a workshop, painting toys with these enticing green paints, their hands and faces often covered in the colorful yet deadly powder. The consequences were insidious. Chronic exposure to arsenic caused a range of horrific symptoms. You might observe a fellow worker developing severe skin lesions, disfiguring ulcers that refuse to heal. Their hair begins to fall out, their nails become brittle and discolored. The internal damage is even more devastating. Vomiting, diarrhea, excruciating stomach pains, and a burning sensation in the throat and stomach become constant companions. Over time, the arsenic attacks the nervous system, leading to weakness, numbness, and even paralysis in the limbs. It also contributes to various cancers. The beautiful green wallpaper adorning the walls of Victorian homes, especially when damp, would release arsenical fumes, sickening entire families. Even the very air in rooms decorated with these fashionable pigments could be toxic. The vibrant, appealing colors, crafted by poisoned hands, brought a slow, agonizing death to those who produced them and in some cases, even to those who merely enjoyed their aesthetic. Beauty in this era truly was deadly, a testament to humanity's unwitting embrace of dangerous chemicals in the pursuit of novelty and aesthetic pleasure. From the glowing dials of watch factories to the vibrant greens of fashionable dresses, from the hats of gentlemen to the depths of the earth, history reveals a grim truth, that some of the greatest dangers were not the ones that roared or exploded, but those that whispered, that insinuated themselves into the very fabric of daily life and labor. The workers in these poison trades, often unaware of the invisible enemy, suffered unimaginable torment, their bodies slowly consumed by the materials meant to create, to adorn, to power. Their stories serve as a haunting reminder of the price paid for progress, a silent testament to the invisible killers that lurked in the shadows of innovation. The next time you see a luminous dial, a vibrant green fabric, or even a simple felt hat, remember the poisoned hands that crafted them, the lives sacrificed to the insidious grip of silent toxicity. Their legacy is not just one of suffering, but also one that shaped our understanding of occupational safety, demanding a future where no hand need be poisoned in the pursuit of creation. You have heard the stories of silent killers, the insidious poisons that crept into the very fibers of life and labor. Now, shift your gaze from the unseen to the overwhelmingly visible, from the insidious whisper to the thunderous roar. Imagine a world where the enemy is not a microscopic particle or a subtle chemical reaction, but the boundless, untamed fury of nature itself. Here, human ingenuity and sheer grit stood sentinel against the elemental chaos, in jobs that demanded not just skill, but an almost defiant courage in the face of annihilation. You are standing on a rocky outcrop, far from the comforting warmth of land, a solitary spire piercing the perpetually bruised sky. The wind howls around you, a relentless, icy tormentor, tearing at your clothes, stealing your breath. Below, colossal waves, like liquid mountains, crash against the ancient rock with a bone-jarring impact, sending plumes of spray hundreds of feet into the air. This is your world. This is the domain of the lighthouse keeper, one of history's truest sentinels of the storm. For centuries, before the advent of radar or satellite navigation, these stoic figures were the guiding stars for countless mariners. Their solitary vigil meant the difference between a safe passage and a watery grave. You are alone for weeks, sometimes months, your only companions the ceaseless shriek of the gales, the rhythmic groan of the tower, and the rhythmic beat of your own heart. Your mission is simple yet monumentally vital. Keep the light burning. The work itself was a constant battle against the elements and against the relentless march of time. Imagine climbing the winding, dizzying stairs, lamp oil sloshing in your bucket, the heavy brass door groaning shut behind you. You reach the lantern room, a glass cage high above the maelstrom. Here you meticulously trim wicks, polish lenses until they gleam like giant jewels, and wind the complex clockwork mechanism that rotates the immense beacon. Your hands grow calloused, your body weary, but your focus must never waver. The smallest imperfection could dim the life-saving beam. But the real test came with the storm. You remember the first time the sea truly unleashed its wrath. The very foundations of the tower seemed to tremble under the assault. The wind screams like a banshee, threatening to rip the lantern room from its perch. Rain lashes horizontally, stinging your exposed skin, blurring the line between sea and sky. You grip the cold iron railing, watching the monstrous waves explode against the base of your tower, the spray rising higher and higher, sometimes even engulfing the entire structure, momentarily plunging you into a terrifying watery darkness before receding to reveal the chaotic scene once more. You are not merely observing the storm. You are immersed in it, part of its raw, primal power. The isolation itself was a unique torture. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, without another human face, another voice besides your own. The vast, indifferent ocean stretched in every direction, a liquid prison. Some keepers spoke of lighthouse madness, a creeping solitude that warped the mind, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. The constant roar of the sea became a symphony of voices, the flickering light playing tricks on weary eyes. Yet you had to remain sane, remain vigilant, for lives depended on it. The dangers were manifold. Beyond the mental toll, there was the constant threat of the tower collapsing, of being swept away by a rogue wave during an exterior maintenance check. Supply boats, your only lifeline to civilization, were often unable to reach you for extended periods during severe weather, leaving you with dwindling provisions, facing hunger and thirst on your solitary rock. Imagine rationing water, counting every last biscuit, while the endless ocean churns around you, a cruel, ironic jest. And then there were the rescues. You recall those harrowing nights when the distress flares pierced the stormy sky, or the faint, desperate cry carried on the wind. Your light, a beacon of hope, sometimes also served as a witness to tragedy. While your primary duty was to guide, a good keeper was also a first responder. You would lower ropes, brave the treacherous rocks in a small dinghy, risking your own life to pull shipwrecked sailors from the grasp of the sea. These acts of heroism were often unsung, witnessed only by the crashing waves and the distant stars. Beyond the lighthouses, other sentinels stood against the storm. Picture yourself on a blustery shoreline, the air thick with salt and the roar of a furious ocean. You are part of an early lifeboat crew, volunteers, often local fishermen or hardy villagers, whose lives were intrinsically tied to the sea. When the storm broke and a ship foundered on the treacherous shoals, it was your call to action. You hear the alarm, a frantic ringing bell carried on the gale. You rush to the lifeboat station, the urgency a palpable current in the bitter air. The heavy wooden lifeboat, specifically designed to brave the worst conditions, is hauled out, often by a team of horses or by sheer manpower, down to the churning surf. You don your heavy oilskins, feeling the cold bite through them instantly. The launch is a perilous dance with the waves, timing your push through the breakers, oars gripped tight, muscles straining against the immense power of the ocean. Imagine the scene: mountainous waves attempting to swamp your vessel, the spray freezing on your face, the wind threatening to rip the oars from your hands. Every stroke is a fight, every moment a test of endurance and nerve. Your eyes scan the chaotic waters for any sign of the distressed ship, for any survivor clinging to debris. The cries of the drowning, carried on the wind, fuel your desperate efforts. You are not just fighting the sea, you are racing against time, against hypothermia, against despair. These early lifeboats, often open to the elements, offered little protection. The danger of capsizing was constant, the threat of being dashed against rocks very real. Many lifeboat men lost their own lives in these heroic endeavors, swallowed by the very sea they sought to conquer for others. Their names, often forgotten by history, are etched into the memory of the communities they served, silent heroes who dared to challenge the storm. From the solitary keepers of the light to the brave crews who rode into the teeth of a gale, these were the sentinels of the storm. Their jobs were not about hidden poisons or invisible dangers, but about the raw, elemental clash between human resilience and nature's boundless power. They lived lives of profound isolation and immense physical peril, often without recognition, driven by a profound sense of duty. Their legacy is etched not in monuments, but in the untold numbers of lives saved, in the ships that found their way home, and in the enduring testament to the human spirit's capacity to stand firm against the most formidable adversaries. They remind us that even in the face of nature's most destructive forces, courage and vigilance can light the darkest paths, guiding humanity through its most dangerous hours. From the roaring gales and treacherous seas, from the elemental fury that tested the lighthouse keeper and the lifeboat crew, we turn now to a different kind of storm. This is a quiet storm, an invisible tempest that rages long after the cannons fall silent and the treaties are signed. This is the aftermath, the lingering shadow of human conflict, where the most dangerous jobs are not found in the face of nature's wrath, but in the insidious relics left behind by man's destructive hand. Imagine a field, serene under the morning sun, perhaps a place where children once played or farmers tilled the soil. But beneath that peaceful surface lies a silent, dormant enemy. A grenade, a mortar shell, an aerial bomb. These are not just inert objects. They are meticulously designed killing machines, temporarily sleeping, waiting for a vibration, a shift in temperature, or the slightest clumsy touch to awaken their devastating power. You walk across what appears to be a normal patch of earth, but with every step, you are navigating a minefield of history, a landscape scarred not by erosion but by the echoes of war. This is the world of unexploded ordnance, or UXO. It is a world where courage is measured not in dramatic rescues, but in methodical precision, in an unwavering focus on the microscopic details of a forgotten fuse. You are not battling a storm you can see, you are confronting a hidden truth, a deadly secret buried just beneath your feet. For decades and even centuries after conflicts end, these silent killers continue their grim work. From the battlefields of Flanders to the rice paddies of Vietnam, from the streets of London during the Blitz to the deserts of Kuwait, the earth holds a dark inventory. Every major war, every skirmish, every deployment leaves behind a deadly legacy. And the people who brave this legacy, the bomb disposal experts, are among the bravest and most methodical individuals you will ever encounter. Step into their boots for a moment. Feel the weight of the Kevlar vest, the subtle hum of the metal detector in your hand. The air is still, perhaps thick with humidity, perhaps biting with cold. Your senses are heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every distant chirp of a bird, is filtered through a mind tuned to one singular purpose: finding the anomaly, the unnatural shape, the metallic signature that screams danger. You are not just looking for a piece of metal, you are searching for a specific design, a trigger mechanism, a payload that could vaporize you and everything within a wide radius in an instant. The training is relentless, preparing you for every conceivable scenario. You learn the anatomy of destruction, the different types of fuses, the intricate wiring, the chemical compositions. You learn to identify a German 88mm shell from a British 250-pound bomb by its subtle contours, by the way it rests in the soil, by the specific degradation of its casing. Each piece of ordnance has its own personality, its own peculiar way of wanting to kill you. And you must know them all intimately without hesitation. Consider the World War II aerial bombs that still surface with alarming regularity in European cities. Construction workers dig foundations and suddenly the earth yields a rusted cylinder, sometimes weighing hundreds or even thousands of pounds, its detonator still primed after 80 years. The entire district is evacuated. Homes are emptied. Streets become silent, eerily devoid of life. And then you arrive. The silence around the bomb is profound. Feels different, heavy, charged. You approach with slow, deliberate steps, each movement rehearsed 1,000 times. Your gloves are on. Your tools are laid out with surgical precision. There is no room for error, no second chances. One slip of the wrench, one misplaced cut, one moment of distraction and everything ends. The clock is not ticking audibly, but you can feel it in your temples, in the rapid pulse in your ears. You examine the device, noting the degree of corrosion, the type of fuse, any booby traps that might have been incorporated. Some bombs are designed to detonate if moved, others if exposed to light, still others with chemical delays. You are staring death directly in its inert, metallic face, trying to understand its final intention, its last instruction from a war long past. The work is intensely solitary even when surrounded by a team. The final act of disarmament, the delicate manipulation of the fuse, is a moment of singular focus, a dance with oblivion that only you can perform. Your colleagues stand back, providing support, but the ultimate decision, the critical action, rests solely on your shoulders. The weight of that responsibility is immense, crushing. You are not just saving your own life, but the lives of all those evacuated, all those who depend on your skill, your unwavering calm. The devices you encounter are not just bombs. They are landmines designed to maim and kill civilians long after soldiers have departed. They are cluster munitions scattering bomblets across vast areas like deadly seeds. They are improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, the cruel and cunning traps of modern asymmetric warfare, often designed to maximize casualties or specifically target bomb disposal teams. Each type presents a unique challenge, a new puzzle where the incorrect answer means immediate, catastrophic failure. From the solitary keepers of the light to the brave crews who rode into the teeth of a gale, these were the sentinels of the storm. Their jobs were not about hidden poisons or invisible dangers, but about the raw, elemental clash between human resilience and nature's boundless power. They lived lives of profound isolation and immense physical peril, often without recognition, driven by a profound sense of duty. Their legacy is etched not in monuments, but in the untold numbers of lives saved, in the ships that found their way home, and in the enduring testament to the human spirit's capacity to stand firm against the most formidable adversaries. They remind us that even in the face of nature's most destructive forces, courage and vigilance can light the darkest paths, guiding humanity through its most dangerous hours. From the roaring gales and treacherous seas, from the elemental fury that tested the lighthouse keeper and the lifeboat crew, we turn now to a different kind of storm. This is a quiet storm, an invisible tempest that rages long after the cannons fall silent and the treaties are signed. This is the aftermath, the lingering shadow of human conflict, where the most dangerous jobs are not found in the face of nature's wrath, but in the insidious relics left behind by man's destructive hand. Imagine a field, serene under the morning sun, perhaps a place where children once played or farmers tilled the soil. But beneath that peaceful surface lies a silent, dormant enemy. A grenade, a mortar shell, an aerial bomb. These are not just inert objects. They are meticulously designed killing machines, temporarily sleeping, waiting for a vibration, a shift in temperature, or the slightest clumsy touch to awaken their devastating power. You walk across what appears to be a normal patch of earth, but with every step, you are navigating a minefield of history, a landscape scarred not by erosion but by the echoes of war. This is the world of unexploded ordnance, or UXO. It is a world where courage is measured not in dramatic rescues, but in methodical precision, in an unwavering focus on the microscopic details of a forgotten fuse. You are not battling a storm you can see, you are confronting a hidden truth, a deadly secret buried just beneath your feet. For decades and even centuries after conflicts end, these silent killers continue their grim work. From the battlefields of Flanders to the rice paddies of Vietnam, from the streets of London during the Blitz to the deserts of Kuwait, the earth holds a dark inventory. Every major war, every skirmish, every deployment leaves behind a deadly legacy. And the people who brave this legacy, the bomb disposal experts, are among the bravest and most methodical individuals you will ever encounter. Step into their boots for a moment. Feel the weight of the Kevlar vest, the subtle hum of the metal detector in your hand. The air is still, perhaps thick with humidity, perhaps biting with cold. Your senses are heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every distant chirp of a bird, is filtered through a mind tuned to one singular purpose: finding the anomaly, the unnatural shape, the metallic signature that screams danger. You are not just looking for a piece of metal, you are searching for a specific design, a trigger mechanism, a payload that could vaporize you and everything within a wide radius in an instant. The training is relentless, preparing you for every conceivable scenario. You learn the anatomy of destruction, the different types of fuses, the intricate wiring, the chemical compositions. You learn to identify a German 88mm shell from a British 250-pound bomb by its subtle contours, by the way it rests in the soil, by the specific degradation of its casing. Each piece of ordnance has its own personality, its own peculiar way of wanting to kill you. And you must know them all intimately without hesitation. Consider the World War II aerial bombs that still surface with alarming regularity in European cities. Construction workers dig foundations and suddenly the earth yields a rusted cylinder, sometimes weighing hundreds or even thousands of pounds, its detonator still primed after 80 years. The entire district is evacuated. Homes are emptied. Streets become silent, eerily devoid of life. And then you arrive. The silence around the bomb is profound. Feels different, heavy, charged. You approach with slow, deliberate steps, each movement rehearsed 1,000 times. Your gloves are on. Your tools are laid out with surgical precision. There is no room for error, no second chances. One slip of the wrench, one misplaced cut, one moment of distraction and everything ends. The clock is not ticking audibly, but you can feel it in your temples, in the rapid pulse in your ears. You examine the device, noting the degree of corrosion, the type of fuse, any booby traps that might have been incorporated. Some bombs are designed to detonate if moved, others if exposed to light, still others with chemical delays. You are staring death directly in its inert, metallic face, trying to understand its final intention, its last instruction from a war long past. The work is intensely solitary even when surrounded by a team. The final act of disarmament, the delicate manipulation of the fuse, is a moment of singular focus, a dance with oblivion that only you can perform. Your colleagues stand back, providing support, but the ultimate decision, the critical action, rests solely on your shoulders. The weight of that responsibility is immense, crushing. You are not just saving your own life, but the lives of all those evacuated, all those who depend on your skill, your unwavering calm. The devices you encounter are not just bombs. They are landmines designed to maim and kill civilians long after soldiers have departed. They are cluster munitions scattering bomblets across vast areas like deadly seeds. They are improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, the cruel and cunning traps of modern asymmetric warfare, often designed to maximize casualties or specifically target bomb disposal teams. Each type presents a unique challenge, a new puzzle where the incorrect answer means immediate, catastrophic failure. Think of the psychological toll. Every day, you are consciously putting yourself in situations where a single error, a single bad calculation, leads to your certain demise. How do you maintain that level of hypervigilance, that exquisite control over fear, day after day, year after year? It is a discipline that transcends mere bravery. It is a profound dedication to meticulousness, a complete surrender to the task at hand. You learn to compartmentalize, to push away the thoughts of family, of future, to exist entirely in the present moment with the object of your focus. The reward is not glory, not parades, but the quiet satisfaction of a job done, of a threat neutralized. It is the sound of the all-clear siren, the sight of people returning to their homes, the knowledge that a hidden killer has been rendered harmless. These are the unsung heroes of a war that never truly ends, the sentinels against a silent, lingering danger. They work in every corner of the globe, from the vast, open fields of Southeast Asia, where decades of conflict left behind a carpet of deadly ordnance, to the bustling urban centers still uncovering relics of long-forgotten sieges. Their work allows communities to rebuild, to farm, to simply live without the constant fear of an explosive past. They are the quiet guardians of peace, meticulously clearing the debris of human aggression, one fuse, one detonator, one explosive device at a time. Their vigilance allows us to walk freely, often without ever realizing the invisible dangers that have been carefully removed from our path. They remind us that even after the most violent conflicts, the world remains a dangerous place, and that there are always those who step forward, with extraordinary courage and unwavering precision, to face the unexploded truth, protecting the living from the deadlier intentions of the past. Their work is a constant, quiet struggle against oblivion, a testament to the enduring human will to reclaim peace from the ashes of war. The quiet struggle against oblivion, the enduring human will to reclaim peace from the ashes of war, often draws our attention to the visible and invisible remnants of conflict. Yet, the story of humanity's most dangerous jobs extends far beyond the battlefield. It stretches into the very earth beneath our feet, and high into the dizzying skies above. It is a chronicle of courage, ingenuity, and immense sacrifice, a testament to those who faced elemental fears to lay the literal foundations of our modern world. These were the men and women who carved out existence from raw nature, whose daily toil was a gamble against collapse, explosion, and the insidious whispers of poisonous gases. Their labor built cities, connected continents, and propelled progress, all while standing on the precipice of constant danger. Theirs was a foundation built on fear. Imagine for a moment you are standing at the mouth of a tunnel, perhaps a century and a half ago. The air is thick and damp, carrying the scent of wet earth, coal dust, and something else indefinable, a metallic tang that speaks of danger. You crane your neck to peer into the gaping maw, a blackness that seems to swallow the dim light of the flickering lanterns. This tunnel is not a passage through a mountain for a scenic railway, but a vital artery for a burgeoning city, a sewer line, a water conduit, or perhaps the beginnings of an underground railway, a subway that would one day carry millions. This vast subterranean labyrinth, indispensable to modern life, was dug by hand, forged by muscle, sweat, and an almost unimaginable tolerance for risk. You step inside, the ground uneven beneath your boots. The sounds here are muffled, oppressive. The drip of water echoing from unseen cracks, the rhythmic scrape of a shovel against rock, the distant clang of metal on stone. Each swing of a pickaxe sends vibrations through the very ground you stand on, a constant reminder of the tons of earth and rock pressing in from all sides. Here, darkness is not just an absence of light, it is a living entity, threatening to disorient, to conceal, to consume. The greatest fear, the one that chills the blood of every man working down here, is collapse. You learn to listen to the subtle groans of the timber supports, the whisper of shifting earth. A small crack can quickly become a devastating cave-in, burying men alive under an avalanche of mud and stone. You might hear a sudden, sharp snap, and your heart leaps into your throat as you scramble for safety, knowing that a moment's hesitation could mean the difference between life and a crushing, suffocating death. The ground you walk on, the walls you press against, are inherently unstable, temporary, held back only by human ingenuity and often sheer luck. Then there is the water. Underground rivers, forgotten springs, or even just the persistent seepage of groundwater, can turn a dry excavation into a death trap in minutes. You might be working knee-deep in freezing water, the current threatening to drag you away, when suddenly a breach occurs, a torrent erupting from the tunnel face, filling the confined space with terrifying speed. Escape routes are often narrow, treacherous, and quickly submerged. The roar of the incoming water is deafening, a primal sound of nature asserting its dominance over human endeavor. And the air itself is an enemy. Invisible, odorless gases lurk in pockets within the earth, waiting to claim their victims. Methane, the dreaded fire damp, can ignite with a single spark from a pickaxe or lantern, turning the tunnel into a roaring inferno, a sudden flash of heat and concussive force that incinerates everything in its path. Carbon monoxide, white damp, is a silent killer, robbing you of your senses, leaving you dizzy, then unconscious, then dead without a single warning. Miners would carry canaries into the depths, their fragile lives a crude early warning system. You would watch the tiny bird intently, hoping it would continue its cheerful song, knowing that its silence signaled your imminent doom. The air grows thin, stale, heavy in your lungs, and you know deep in your gut that every breath is a risk. In some of the most ambitious projects, like the great tunnels beneath rivers, a different terror emerged: caisson disease, or the bends. Here, workers descended into massive pressurized chambers, called caissons, to excavate the riverbed. The pressure kept the water out, but it also forced nitrogen into their bloodstreams. You would spend hours in that compressed air, your body adapting, before ascending to the surface. But if you came up too quickly, the nitrogen would bubble out of your blood like gas from an open soda bottle, causing agonizing pain in your joints, paralysis, brain damage, or even death. You might see a colleague suddenly buckle, clutching their limbs, screaming in agony, their body contorting in unimaginable torment. The descent into the caisson was a journey into an alien, dangerous world, and the ascent a perilous gamble with your very life. The men who did this work were often desperate, earning meager wages for an extraordinary risk. Their lives were short, marked by chronic pain, respiratory ailments, and the ever-present threat of sudden, violent death. Their bodies bore the scars of countless near misses. their minds haunted by the screams of those who weren't so lucky. They were the foundation layers, the subterranean architects, working in conditions that defy modern comprehension, building the very arteries of the cities we now take for granted. But not all foundational dangers were beneath the earth. Look up, and you see the skeletal framework of the very first skyscrapers piercing the urban canopy. The early 20th century saw cities suddenly reaching for the heavens, a dizzying vertical expansion. Here, a different kind of bravery was demanded, one that defied gravity and the terrifying expanse of open air. You are a sky boy, a structural iron worker, perched hundreds of feet above the teeming streets. The wind whips around you, tugging at your clothes, threatening to rip you from your precarious perch on a narrow steel beam. Below, the world is a miniature diorama, the bustling activity of human life reduced to an insignificant hum. Your job is to connect massive steel girders, bolting them into place, often with nothing but a safety rope around your waist, if even that. The most constant companion up here is vertigo. You look down and your stomach lurches, a primal fear of falling seizing your very being. A misstep, a strong gust of wind, a moment's loss of concentration, and you are plunged into the abyss. The fall is swift, brutal, often ending in a gruesome impact far below. Every day you witness or hear of another man lost to the sky, a life extinguished in a terrifying plummet. The air around you is filled with the deafening clatter of riveting guns, the hiss of steam, and the shouts of men. Molten rivets, heated to cherry red in small portable furnaces, are tossed through the air from one man to another, a deadly projectile if missed. Sparks shower down, threatening to burn flesh or set clothes alight. Tools slip from hands, plummeting earthward, a danger to those below. You live in a constant state of high alert, your senses sharpened, your nerves frayed. These iron workers, many of them Mohawk indigenous people from Canada, earned a reputation for fearlessness and an uncanny sense of balance. They walked across narrow beams with a dancer's grace, connecting the sinews of these metal giants. But even their extraordinary skill could not entirely ward off the dangers. Broken bones, crushing injuries, and death were common occupational hazards. They literally built the future, beam by towering beam, their courage forming the steel spine of modern metropolises. From the crushing darkness beneath the earth to the dizzying heights of the nascent skyline, these foundational jobs were steeped in fear. They demanded an almost incomprehensible resilience, a willingness to confront primal dangers every single day. The anonymous men and women who performed these tasks laid the groundwork for our world, often paying with their health, their limbs, or their very lives. Their struggles, though largely forgotten, echo in the stability of our buildings, the flow of our water, and the very pathways we traverse. They remind us that even in the pursuit of peace and progress, humanity has always faced formidable, often self-imposed, dangers, building our world piece by terrifying piece.